listen. Is that a GL? Thank you. Yeah.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, 4 years ago when I joined debating, a very famous senior of mine looked at me and said, you know what, if you read The Economist, if you read the BBC, you will just find... Incidentally, I had to watch movies and read comics as well. Alright, here's the thing, right? We need to remember that at the end of the day, Tony Stark is still human. Or and ultimately, he is an individual, ladies and gentlemen. And what that implies by extension, that he is slave to the same cognitive processes that exist with every individual on planet Earth, ladies and gentlemen. And by virtue of that, we don't think we must trust the fate of the entire Earth. I'm assuming that in this context, like Superman and all don't exist because we're arguing in the real world, ladies and gentlemen. Like, yes, this is the motion inspired by movie, but this value judgment does take place in the real world. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, our analysis is that an individual should not be trusted with the fate of the world. We do not think, ladies and gentlemen, that as good as you may be, you have the capability to decide what is best for everyone at all times, ladies and gentlemen. We don't think any human or even a divine entity, for those of us who are atheists, should ever possess that capability to decide those things. I'm going to talk to you about two things, right? I'm going to analyze to you under which paradigm is the likelihood of diffuse later, ladies and gentlemen. I'm also going to talk to you about how availability is best maximized under our paradigm. I'm going to extend on what Rohit brought out there. But let's look at a couple of other things. And let's analyze this issue of democratic mandate. And his analysis of this was the kind of thing I did when I was learning about how to debate in my first year. That individuals don't make every decision on earth. Yeah, they don't make any decision in a democracy, but they elect people who they deem fit to make the best decisions, ladies and gentlemen. And even these people do not make these decisions individually. They have a panel of experts, ladies and gentlemen, making these decisions for them. But more importantly, right, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, these people still have to be accountable to the people themselves. We think, ladies and gentlemen, that given that people are the ones who are being impacted, they are likely to then necessarily make sure they use it in the best interest of the individuals on the ground, ladies and gentlemen. But more importantly, right, when he went up and said, well, the US government in this apparent movie wanted to nuke the United States of America itself to ward off Soviet invasion. Like, we think in real life, even the stupidest of dictators aren't stupid enough to kill off all their subjects because they are left with no one to rule in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't rule dead bodies unless like other NUS debaters set up a debate in the zombie world. The next issue, ladies and gentlemen, was that, hey, what about the arms race that will take place? But that's under the assumption that China doesn't want its own Chinese Iron Man in the first place after learning of Tony Stark, right? Like, why would Hu Jintao want to be the next big superhero? And what about Mr. Vladimir Putin, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we think he would be more than happy to necessarily have an Iron Man costume. Or Kim Jong-un in North Korea, ladies and gentlemen, like, already is probably stating the claim that he invented this costume. But why would he want to we think that the arms exist under their paradigm, and our paradigm exists under theirs too. We think then that's problematic. But then there's this bizarre idea that, hey, we think that he will always be associated with Iron Man as Tony Stark, and whenever Iron Man does something bad, that will fall upon him. We don't see why that has to be the case, like a public announcement, ladies and gentlemen. They see why he'll always be associated with that. That's just bizarre. So before I move on to further analysis, yes?
What do you think is alright for the United States of America fighting only for its own interest, its own national security, to possess monopoly over this weapon, as opposed to Tony Stark, individual who I proved to you, someone fighting for justice and good?
Yeah, okay. Tony Stark's a swell fellow, no doubt. But the question is, will he stay like that forever? But more importantly, can you guarantee to me that any individual will retain the same intentions for the rest of his life? But more importantly, can you prove to me that Tony Stark is invincible and immortal? I hope he's not immortal, but then at least doesn't. Let's talk on our current stance, right? Because you need to recognize that who is more likely to necessarily go ahead and misuse this. Let's look at the kind of emotions an individual is slave to. Things like temper, I mean, ask me, I know, ladies and gentlemen. But other things, right? Things like ego, things like other sort of emotions that ultimately go ahead and dictate how an individual behaves. He's a person who's at the mercy of these sort of emotions, ladies and gentlemen. We don't think these will always drive him to take the best decisions. But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at what kind of things the government is at the mercy of. The government is at the mercy of the constitution, of a judiciary, of an entire country of people, ladies and gentlemen, who aren't evil. These are necessarily good people, ladies and gentlemen. Some of them are bonkers, but most of them are a swell bunch of people in the USA. We think the government is necessarily answerable to these people. The government is answerable to the IHL, so that's a phrase I absolutely hate these days. There is a certain Malaysian tone. So we think at the end of the day, it's the government who's necessarily accountable to factors that are more reliable. Yes, nothing is absolute. Yes, potential for harm exists under both paradigms. But you need to see where that is more likely, ladies and gentlemen, for an individual who is just a mortal, ladies and gentlemen, slave to fundamental emotions that even you and I feel on daily levels, ladies and gentlemen. You need to ask yourselves, is any one of you, barring the budgetary constraints, capable of being a superhero who will rule the world or who will take care of the entire world, ladies and gentlemen? The last thing then was, I said, look, the United States of America cannot be trusted because now that there's a superpower, ladies and gentlemen, they will go ahead and bully the entire world. We didn't see them do that because, ladies and gentlemen, they're already a superpower, right? These are people who contain abilities beyond any other country. 47.6% of the world's military expenditure is done by the USA. If the USA so wish, they can very well bully the world in status quo, ladies and gentlemen, but they choose not to. Why? Because we aren't in the medieval ages, ladies and gentlemen. Because we have people with evolved sense of morality who themselves reckon, ladies and gentlemen, that world domination isn't the goal of their nation. The USA is comprised of individuals who believe in a good sense of morality, who do not go ahead and wish to harm people, ladies and gentlemen. We think we are at a stage of enlightenment in the human civilization where we have a shared humanity with other people. We don't think then at the end of the day, US is comprised of individuals who wish to go to other lands, dominate them, subjugate them, ladies and gentlemen, and become imperial colonial masters like the British were a few years back. All the harm, ladies and gentlemen, that exists under our paradigm according to them exist infinitely more under their paradigm, and with my limited knowledge of movies, I'm very proud.